and 11 other people were found guilty of drug sales and conspiracy. Today, Steve Bauman was in the courtroom when Nicky Barnes and 2 other defendants were sentenced.
Whenever he's come to court, even the day he was convicted, Barnes has worn the same icy look, revealing no emotion whatsoever. So it was today as his attorney appealed for leniency, reminding the judge that his client had been acquitted on 3 of the charges, although he was convicted on 3 others. Barnes himself stood and claimed his innocence, maintaining that he never even spoke to the 3 people who had testified as the government's main witnesses against him. U.S. Attorney Fisk then told the judge that the proof had been convincing and overwhelming that Barnes ran the most profitable venal heroin ring in the city and that he should receive the harshest sentence possible to show others that narcotics is not the quick and easy road to riches. U.S. District Judge Henry Worker agreed. He said Barnes' past record of arrests, even though convicted only once, showed he'd been skirting the law for years and that he represented a great danger and threat to the city. The sentence on the charge under a recent law of operating a continuing criminal business, life imprisonment without any built-in provision for parole. A $120,000 fine was also tagged on. Barnes hardly blinked, although there were gasps from the spectators. The defendant then shook hands with his lawyer and was led away. 2 others, convicted as Barnes' top lieutenants, received sentences of 30 years each. Outside the federal courthouse, defense and prosecution attorneys spoke briefly with reporters. Mr. Breitbart said that there were many grounds for the defense to appeal. Foremost was that the defense team had been denied any personal knowledge about the potential jurors.
The strongest issues so far that, and this is just in a cursory examination of the record for the last month since the trial, and we have much more time now to litigate the entire appeal. They're going to revolve around the anonymous jury question, the misconduct of jurors. I don't know if you gentlemen were aware, but during the course of the trial, one of the jurors did give the finger to the defense lawyers, and there was no questioning of the juror with regard to what motivated him to do something like that.
I really don't want to get into any detailed discussion of the arguments on appeal, but we're satisfied that the judge's ruling on each of those issues as it came up at the trial was entirely proper.
Do you believe this sets a problematic precedent in regard to having anonymous juries?
I would think that in the future courts would use that system very selectively. And it sets some sort of a precedent, but I really think it's up to the courts to decide in what kind of unusual cases that kind of procedure is appropriate.
Barnes once did successfully appeal a conviction after serving 5 years on state charges. His attorney says this is the first case on record in which all information about the jurors was kept from the defense, and he believes the chances for an appeal are very good. But as it stands right now, Mr. Untouchable is behind bars forever. The prosecution hopes it will serve as a deterrent. Narcotics cops here say the uptown heroin supermarket is just as busy as ever. This is Steve Bauman, Channel 5 News.
Busy as ever in this city is a $5.5 million a day business, the way police average out the megabucks of dealing dope on the wholesale level. The truth is, no one knows for sure how much money or dope is being dealt in the city. It's not a business that publishes annual reports. But for people like Nicky Barnes, it's a very sound industry indeed, with a population of hundreds of thousands of heroin addicts, most of them clustered in areas like Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, and the South Bronx. Manhattan dope deals from 59th Street to the tip of the island are also the business of the detectives who occupy the 4th floor loft of the old 32nd Precinct House. Even though it took the resources of the federal government to put Nicky Barnes away, city narcotics detectives have had several dealings with Barnes, none of which have ever ended well for the cops when they got their cases to court. None of the officers in the Manhattan North office today had ever personally worked on a Barnes case, nor were they particularly moved in any way at the news of his sentencing, nor did they think the sentencing will deter the others who deal dope at the executive level.
There are some 50, 60 other aspiring Nicky Barneses out there that feel they could aspire up to that pinnacle. They also feel they're smarter than he was and possibly won't even get caught.
And, but seeing one of them get caught, Nicky Barnes, does it make you feel good?
Yes, it's nice to see the Kingpin get caught and convicted, yes. It's gratifying.
One narcotics detective put it this way: with Nicky Barnes going into the slammer for an extended stay, someone is certain to try to move into his spot. It could be handled as an amicable business deal and we'll never know about it. Or, if it goes wrong, we won't know about it until we start picking up bodies. Bob O'Brien, Channel 5 News.
What's the good of having a lot of money if you don't have any real friends? You've heard that before, often by preachers in Sunday sermons. So it was very unusual to hear that today from a man who used to be Harlem's biggest dope dealer. But that's what Nicky Barnes was saying. John Miller reports he was also talking about a former friend, Nicholas Sperling, now on trial for selling heroin.
For the second day in his life, Nicky Barnes continued in his new role, government witness. His job here in federal court giving up information on his former associates. During the trial today, he went on to describe the activities of the council, 6 major drug dealers and himself that allegedly ran the most profitable heroin trafficking ring in Harlem. After Barnes implicated his former partners, a prosecutor asked him why he decided to cooperate. Barnes began by saying he told his wife and his girlfriend to stay away from members of the council. He told of phone conversations he had from jail in which he learned that both women were running around with his old buddies. Barnes went on. He said that he started to think about his friends and about his life. He spoke of the millions, the drugs, snorting coke and driving Mercedes. And then Barnes reflected from the stand that his whole life evolved around the dope and the money, and that none of his friends liked him for who he was, but for what he was. Barnes said everyone, even his lawyers, had double-crossed him. When he was finished, the prosecutors did not ask how many murders Barnes had ordered or how many deaths he was responsible for indirectly by pumping hundreds of kilos of heroin into the streets and schoolyards of New York. At the end of Barnes' soliloquy, lawyers for the government and the defense rose to say, no further questions. There's been a lot of speculation about what Barnes will get out of the deal, what the payoff will be from the government for turning witness. But you have to bear in mind that Barnes came to the government this time, upset with his former associates for allegedly running off with his wife and girlfriend and cutting him out of the deal. Barnes could conceivably apply for a pardon from the president. His lawyer is not optimistic about that. He hopes that Barnes will just get better treatment as he spends the rest of his life in jail. John Miller, Channel 5 News.